Hi, welcome back to video 4 in our Flip Videos section for the cognitive approach. And today we're going to look at two models. We're going to compare the models of the level of processing model and the multi-store model. Now, just to reiterate that in psychology, when we talk about a model, we're talking about a conceptual model, a theoretical model. This would be like the diagram of the London Underground. It's not to scale, it's not exact, it's not accurate, but if we look at it, it helps us appreciate how it works and where we're going. Models in psychology are rather like that. So this is from the cognitive approach, which emphasizes brain processing and the handling of information, and uses the computer analogy. Incidentally, IBM have just called their latest chip the Synapse, and it uses a system based on neural networks in the human brain. So we're going to compare levels of processing and multi-store model. In exam speak, when you're comparing, it means look at the similarities and the differences between two things. So we look at our levels of processing approach. We can see that the way we process things affects the strength of a memory. If we have shallow processing, we only get short-term retention because we have a weak memory trace. And if we have deep processing, we have a stronger memory trace, which leads to long-term retention. Craig did say that depth is the same as meaningfulness rather than the number of times you look at a piece of information. So if we look at this, you can see that there's a summary of the key points of the model there. Just to emphasize the key vocab that you need to be using when you're writing about this. There are problems with the levels of processing model. Case studies like Clive Waring. Obviously, with Clive's long-term memory being intact and his short-term memory not being intact, it does indicate there are two separate stores. The primacy and recency effect also indicates there are two separate stores, the short-term memory and the long-term memory. And when you've got scans showing localized activity for the short-term memory and the long-term memory, again, it indicates two separate stores. The picture shows activity in the frontal lobes, which is short-term memory. Eysenck pointed out that concepts like depth are vague and can't be directly observed and tested, which is a big problem for a theory that's supposed to be a scientific theory. So again, just to emphasize the important vocab. Atkinson and Shiffrin's multi-store model. You can see that it's an information processing model with a clear input, processing and output. Key points are that there are separate and unitary short-term and long-term memory, which we've seen evidence for already. A memory is a process of its own. Memory involves rehearsal, it's linear and is located in specific areas. So these directly contradict the levels of processing model. These are the differences. Just to emphasize the important vocab and the problems for multi-store model. Flashbulb memories. As I've said to you before, a flashbulb memory is a clear and distinct memory, not of the thing that you're talking about, such as the death of Princess Diana, but of where you were when you heard it. And I can remember being in bed on that Sunday morning and being called by a friend who was sobbing and saying that Princess Diana was dead. And that memory is very clear, very distinct, and is not rehearsed at all. So memory is clearly not just about rehearsal. I've lost count of the number of times I've been in exams and I cannot remember a vital piece of information that I've revised and rehearsed several times. And the stores are clearly not unitary. Badley and Hitch, 1974, showed that the short-term memory is not unitary and could be divided up into the visual spatial sketchpad, the central executive and the phonological loop, etc., etc. However, the multi-store model does remain a dominant model in lay people's conversation about memory and still very influential. Both models have some similarities. They're both supported by lab experiments. The use of controlled environments, and experimental designs means that cause and relationships can be seen with manipulation of the IV. However, because they're in what we call an artificial surrounding, you do have to wonder about ecological validity. Ecological validity refers to the fact that do we really have to learn word lists in everyday life? They're also based on the principle of organisation. In 1967, Mandler gave students 52 words on a set of cards to sort out and told them they could sort them out using their own system. They found that retention was best when participants devised their own system with lots of subheadings and sorted the cards accordingly, which suggests that organising material of itself makes things more memorable. Both models have practical applications. An application is a way we can use something in everyday life. Levels of processing shows that we have to make sure our revision is meaningful, otherwise it's only short term, and we also have to do it a number of times. So both of these explain why last minute cramming does not work for exams. And both models are quite limited, and they don't account fully for the messy and complex business that is human memory. So here's the activities we're going to be looking at next lesson. If you could choose some and then come to the lesson with some questions.